for those who are politically wise, a show about the lives of Christians in Ohio involved with politics. Introducing your host, Reverend Thomas Wise.
Greetings, my fellow patriots, saints, and sinners. The show is titled Politically Wise, and I am your host, Reverend Thomas Wise. At the end of the show, there will be a blessing. Don't miss it. But first, a word from our sponsor.
To some people, they're just a pet, a dog or a cat. But to you, they're part of your family. They've shared your lives, provided companionship, and given unconditional love. And just like when a human family member passes on, you want your four-legged family members to be treated with dignity. Baker, Hazel, and Snyder Funeral Home and Crematory has been caring for families since 1941 and now offers the same level of service for your pets at Snyder Pet Crematory. Call 274-1151, 274-1151.
The opinions and statements on this show belong to those who give them. The rest of the show belongs to Thomas Wise Words, all rights reserved. The show is titled Politically Wise, and I am your host, Reverend Thomas Wise. Hello, my listeners. This is Reverend Thomas Wise. The show is called Politically Wise. I am at the State House today in Representative Jeff McClain's office. Jeff, tell my listeners about yourself.
Well, I am a native of Upper Sandusky, Ohio. Born there, lived there all my life, except when I went to college. My wife, Barb, and I have been married 33 years. We have 3 children, Reardon, Mallory, and Mackenzie, a son and 2 daughters. We have 4 granddaughters, Nora, Macaria, Fiona, and Harlow. And I was county auditor for 26 and a half years, and I'm in my 5th year here at the House.
Okay, so what's hot issues for you?
A little bit of everything.
What committees you sit on in that?
I'm the vice chairman of the Finance and Appropriations, and I'm on the Ways and Means Committee. So what that means is I'm involved in the committees that deal with every penny that's spent and every penny that comes in. And because of that, I've been heavily involved in all of the issues, the Medicaid expansion. I was a no vote on the controlling board on that for a lot of reasons. We think that we need to be helping our citizens with a hand up rather than just dollars out. There's better ways to do this. That was one of them. I've been heavily involved in all of the tax reform that's been going on, and obviously with the budget. So it's a busy job. It's something that keeps us hopping. But it's very rewarding when you can work hard and get the job done and think good things happen.
So, what counties do you represent? Upper Sandusky,
I live in Upper Sandusky, and that's Wyandotte County. That's the county seat of Wyandotte. I represent all of Wyandotte, Crawford, and Morrow counties, and I have 2 townships in Seneca County all the way to Fostoria, and I have 6 townships in Marion County. It's either the number 1 or the number 2 ag district in the state. I was just reading an article a little bit ago about the corn yield and the soybean yield. So it's a record year for corn in Ohio. Our area is obviously part of that.
Yeah. And so how is your districts doing economically?
Well, it depends on where you are. We have pockets that are doing very well. Ag is the number 1 industry in the state of Ohio. In my district, it's really the number 1 district, or the number 1 business industry, and because of that, we are a little sheltered from some of the other stuff. Because if ag's going well, like it has the last 4 or 5 years, that kind of filters down. We do have quite a bit of manufacturing for the car industry because we're not too far from Honda and some other things that are going on. That has been a little slower, and in the district, you've got some areas. Wyandotte County tends to do a little better than some of the other counties. The city of Marion, which is just outside my district, is still one of the most poverty-stricken areas in the state of Ohio. I used to have Marion, but when we redistricted, I'm just outside the city limits now. Some of the other areas in the district are struggling a little bit at times, Bucyrus at times, but on the whole, it's coming back up, and it's something that we hope that we can continue to help with. But it still comes down to the fact of how much hope that these entrepreneurs have. If they think things are going to get better, they tend to do more.
So why did you get into politics?
Well, I've been in politics since I was 23, so it was a long time ago. I was actually finishing up my degree. I have an accounting degree from Tiffin University, and there was an election for county auditor, and my predecessor had some issues, so I decided I ought to run. Luckily, I had a lot of cousins, and and I was elected in 1982, and I was there for, as I said, 26 and a half years. And at the end of that, my predecessor here in the House had been asking me a couple of years to run. And I kept saying, well, I don't know. I like what I'm doing. I don't know if I want to go. Because there's other things. There are great rewards being down here, but there are a lot of sacrifices too. Being away from family, a lot of other things. In fact, I was recruited a couple of times over the years to do this sooner. But I said, listen, I say I'm a family man, and I mean it. I don't want to miss it, that kind of stuff. So I waited. And God gave me the chance a second time, or a third time actually, before I said yes. And one of the things that was interesting was back in 2007 when I was first deciding to run or not, I'd gotten to the point where I was pretty fed up, some of the stuff you have to do, fundraising and some of the other things. And I told my wife, I said, I'm not so sure. And she's the prayer warrior in the family. And she told me, she said, well, let's keep praying about it about a week or so, and we'll see what happens. And we kept praying, and within a week, 2 people had come to me and said, it's not about what you want, it's about what God's prepared you for. And it wasn't neon lights, but it was clear enough for me that God put me here, and He has used me here. We have a number of great folks that are here that are believers. We have a lot more than people realize. And God's working through this, and He puts us all in a lot of different places. We have ministries. Whether you're a plumber or a state representative or a pastor, there's a lot of different ministries out there.
What's it like, difference between being in the county back home and being here in terms of getting things done? What's the expectations?
Mm-hmm. Well, Wyandott's one of the smaller counties, for one thing. I think we're the 6th from the smallest. It's a rural county, a lot of farmland. And as the auditor there, you're following the rules. I mean, you're just managing the business of the county, so you're not really changing things. I mean, you're making sure that everything's correct and proper, but you're not really changing lives. And that's something that we can do here in ways that are really unfathomable. And we have, both through laws that we do, or actually just through constituent work. We've had a situation. One of my favorite days was about 4 years ago. We had some grandparents that their children had not done well. They got in trouble with the law, and they were going to lose their kids to foster care. And the grandparents wanted the children, wanted to have them in the house, and really were getting a runaround from the local JFS. And we kind of got involved and said, hey, this doesn't make sense. Let's look at this again. Can we do the job and do what's right? And that night they had the kids. I mean, so that was a good day. There are a lot of other things that we do that helps the tax situation, where we got more businesses come in, more jobs. There are things that we're doing. We passed 5 pro-life bills in the last General Assembly, to the point where I saw some news the other day that there are abortion centers that are closing in Ohio. So that's a great day. There are any number of things that we can do, and it's up to us to make sure that we're trying to follow God and make sure that we're doing what He wants us to do, and not just maybe what our ego wants us to do.
And we will be right back after the break.
Next time you're thinking about beating the train, think again. It takes a typical freight train traveling 50 miles an hour, 1.5 miles to stop. That's nearly 18 football fields. Don't try to beat the train. Ohio's roads can be highways or dieways. The choice is yours. A message from Operation Lifesaver and this station.
The show is titled Politically Wise, and I am your host, Reverend Thomas Wise. Where do you go to church?
I'm a member of Trinity Evangelical United Methodist in Upper Sandusky, and that's a great story as well. About 18 years ago, we were a church in Upper Sandusky, the corner church, that type thing, and we were down to about 80 people, and had a meeting about, well, what are we going to do? Like a lot of churches, we have problems with finances. What are we going to do? Well, we came out of that meeting thinking that we think God wants us to hire a youth pastor. which makes absolutely no sense. We did that. 18 years later, we are in a Family Life Center. We have almost 1,000 folks on Sundays, 3 different services. And the numbers aren't the thing. It's what God's doing is what's so important and what's so impressive. We just continue to follow. We have ministries about youth, so we're getting folks in because of their kid, because somebody showed them that God loves your child, and so do we, in the right way. And because of that, it's changing lives. And in fact, we're expanding about a third again, and it's all classrooms for Sunday school and some things like that. It's a wonderful thing that God's doing, and it's all about Him. All we did was try to follow along and go where He kind of pointed us.
Well, what other changes did the church have to make?
Well, was
it a change in philosophy, or? No,
we were always pretty much, we're fairly what you would call conservative. I mean, we believe the Bible is the Word of God, and we believe that Jesus is the one and only way, like a lot of churches do. But we became much more, because of the focus of hiring a youth pastor to feed the children, and that has expanded. I mean, we're involved, like a lot of churches, with Upward. We have anywhere from 500 to 1,000.
What is Upward?
Oh, I'm sorry. Upward is a ministry that was started in, I think, Tennessee. A lot of churches do it. It's basketball, it's touch football, it's soccer, it's cheerleading, where you get the children in, and it's usually from about first grade to sixth grade, and it is unapologetically Christ-based. I mean, every week you get coaching in those sports, but you also get the gospel, and it is all volunteers, and just through the example of those volunteers, that you've been to the Little League games where people are yelling, and I mean, we really focus on the, hey, we're here, we're supportive, absolutely wonderful. I've seen it change lives. We had, over the years, I've done a lot of different things involved with it, but I was a referee at one time, and I can remember this little boy, he's dribbling, the ball goes off his foot, and you can see he's about ready to start crying. And in a situation like this, you just kind of bump the ball back to him and said, let's go. And he started dribbling, and the crowd, instead of yelling, they're clapping, and you could just see the kid's face light up. And we've been doing this long enough now that, in fact, I think we're in our 10th year. You see these kids as they go through high school, they go through and longer, and you see the change, and it's just to these different ministries. We have Upper Sandusky, as I said, is the county seat. There are only 3 high schools in Wyandotte County, and we're small. We have 200 to 250 kids on Wednesday nights from 5 different counties, from I think 10 high schools that come on for Reignite, the high school ministries. That's God. I mean, it's just something that, as I say, we can't take credit for it. All we do is try to do what God wants us to do, and just see how He works. And that has been through that. And through that focus, that's where the church really grew, because we were, the numbers, that I've seen them, but your chances are much better if you meet Christ before you're 17 or 18, because after that we tend to get stupid, and we tend to be much more prideful, and you're not going to. So we've done that, but we've seen the effect of those kids bringing their parents to church, and then they get the gospel. And they get it in a way that's loving, but we say, hey, this is right, this is wrong, this is what you need to do. And it's an amazing thing that God's done.
This is how many terms you've been here?
I'm finishing my third. I'm finished my 5th, so I have one more election.
One more election.
And then somebody asked me the other day, what are you going to do? It doesn't seem like we should be worrying 3 years from now, but they say, what are you going to do? And I said, well, God put me here, I'll see what He's got in plan for me next, and it'll be an exciting time, because there are a lot of opportunities out there.
So how has your faith been challenged here?
I'm not sure it's been challenged in the way that people might think. I've always been fairly outgoing, so I've been very upfront in my campaigns and everywhere else. I've talked about God, and it's not to say, look at me, but they'll ask you, why do you do the things you do? I said, well, because this is what I believe. And it's, as you know, being a Christian is not just on Sundays. I mean, it is what you are. I mean, when we go all in, when we accept Jesus, when we take the Holy Spirit, I mean, it should be what forms us and what controls us. So that's something that's been very good. I live in a district that's not a problem. I get no pushback. In fact, it's appreciated. They really like the fact that you are a believer, that you are doing what you think is right. And to be honest, if they don't, well, vote for somebody else.
Do you have a guiding scripture?
I do. I think it's in Micah, and it's terrible. I can't remember the thing, but it's do justly, love mercy, walk humbly with your God. I try to do it on a daily basis, and that's, if you do that, if you do right by folks, if you have mercy and compassion, and especially the last one, you get down here and folks tend to think they're pretty special sometimes because everybody treats us so well. We need to make sure that we remember what we are in God's light, and that's just a sinner that He's saved by grace. And when you do that, good things happen.
Tell me about a bad day in politics.
Well, there are days, we have some very tough decisions. There are times when we make decisions to say no, especially in finance. When you've got dollars, there are more good areas to put the money than there are dollars. And sometimes we have to say no. And that has a real effect on people. And there are times that there's somebody could get some help. I mean, one of the problems we got right now is with addictions. We know that there are certain ways that they can get rehab. They can, both mental health and other issues. There's not enough dollars to go around, and you see the impact that has on those lives.
How do you say no? I mean, how do you know? Is it just dollars and cents, or you have some sort of guiding principle with that?
Well, it's to a certain extent, yes, and this kind of colors the question a little bit too. People will say, "Well, this is a need. How can you say no?" Well, sometimes no is the best answer for that person. I use the example, and we have a lot of these areas where sometimes people have struggle and have problems because of their behaviors, certain things they do, decisions. And I always use the example of, if my son's 15 years old, he's 30 now, but when he was 15, if he has some habits that I know are going to cause problems for him, they're not in his best interest. Do I love him more or less if I let him continue? I love him a lot less. If I love him, I'm going to stop him, and I'm going to correct his behavior. And that's kind of what we've got. That's not always the case, but there are a lot of times the folks in prison, drugs, lack of education, we've got people dropping out. We need to make sure they get educations. So sometimes the best, the most loving thing to do is to say no. So that's kind of what you get into sometimes.
Well, how do you keep your head and your heart clear with all these people begging for, appealing for money and appealing for funds and appealing for your vote?
Well, I think in my case, I keep centered, I guess, because I know what I am with God, and I know I'm covered by His grace. He didn't ask us to be perfect. He asked us to be faithful. He asked us to continue to do what we think is right and to help others. If we're doing that, we're not going to be perfect. There are times that we've made wrong decisions, obviously. There are times that are not popular decisions, but you have to do what you think is right. And you can't beat yourself up over it. I mean, and because we know that there's only one perfect place, and we're not there yet.
I see. So the show is titled Politically Wise, and I am your host, Reverend Thomas Wise. Do you pray for a politician? Do you think a politician can be a Christian? Do you think a politician should stand up for Christian principles? Do you think politicians should pray together? Do you want to see more Christians in politics? If you said yes to any of these questions, please join the Ohio Prayer Caucus Network. Find the Ohio Prayer Caucus Network on Facebook. Welcome back to Politically Wise. If you want to email me, you may do so at politically.wise@gmail.com. Please like us on our Facebook page, Politically Wise. Have you advice for someone following in your footsteps?
Well, I think you just have to be true to yourself. We see folks down here, and a good example of the other side is there's a Democrat that I know that I believe that he's pro-life. I had a conversation with him. I know where he goes to church. I know, and I'm pretty sure he still is. But I said, well, how can you vote pro-choice when I know your heart? And he said, well, I'd never get elected. Well, to me, that's kind of pretty pessimistic. And I shared with him, I said, well, I'm a lot more worried about standing in front of the man later than I am my voters tomorrow. And you really have to be, I think you really have to rely on God. I mean, because there are going to be times that you're going to get hammered. There are times you're going to be called names. There are a lot of other things. But you just have to rely on the fact that God's going to give you what you need. He's going to give us He's gifted us all differently, but He's given us things that we can do. And He's given us places to go. And you really can't dwell on the other side of the attacks and stuff. You just have to continue to be true to yourself and be able to look at yourself in the mirror in the morning.
What 3 things that you think a politician needs to have set on their head and their heart to be a success?
Well, I think number one, it's your faith. I mean, it's God first. It would be very hard to do this job without that, I believe. You have to, and through that, I think it's going to guide you in the other, because, on our own, we're not likely to have that much compassion for other people. We are self-centered folks. And because of God, you're going to have a lot more compassion for other people. You're going to have concern for others. And you're going to want to make their lives better rather than yourself. I think that's the second thing. And the third is you, and this is going to be something I think is colored by your faith, is you're going to be brutally honest. I think you have to be. When I go out, and I don't take any credit for this. I got this from my dad. He was the example. I never heard him tell a lie, not even a white lie. Sometimes that made it uncomfortable around, because he told you what it was. But if you tell the truth, it's that old adage, you don't have to worry about what you said before. I mean, you tell the truth. Sometimes we're wrong, but you told the truth as you knew it at the time. And I think those are the things. If you got those, I think you'll be fine. Because there's a fourth to do. You have to work hard. This is not an easy job. You have to get out and do things.
A lot of handshaking.
Yeah, it is, but it's a lot more than that. It's just the relationships. You've got to be out. You've got to find out how these things impact people. Because if you sit here in the office all day, you're not going to really understand what some of these decisions are going to make.
How is things like, anger and bitterness and resentment and things like that play in the role of relationships up here? Oh,
it could very much so. Again, because of my faith, I really don't struggle with much of that. Because we know, I mean, it's if you're going to hold resentments, if you're going to hold grudges, guess what? That's poison on you. It's not on the person you're mad at. But you'll see instances where people are mad or they'll hold grudges for something somebody did. And there are frustrations. I mean, there are days that you're not real happy with other folks, including folks in your own caucus at times. But you just have to remember that they're representing 115,000 folks the same as you are. They're not perfect, nor are you. And you have to really respect their right to have their positions. And as I say, sometimes we do things wrong. Sometimes we're wrong. Sometimes agendas get involved. But you just keep plugging away.
So how do you, I know you're on the budget committee, so like every first of the year, you are losing hair from the stress.
Well, it's going gray. I haven't lost much. Okay. Yeah, and the budget process especially. We just had a budget this year. So literally, October a year ago, we were already preparing, and before that even, but really starting to prepare. And the first of the year, then it's 60, 70 hours a week, every week until the end of June. Now, that's not everybody on the finance, but as I said, I'm the vice chair. The chairman puts in more hours than I do. You really are trying to guide that through, because you've got a 6,000-page bill that deals with the entire state of Ohio's budget. And we're talking dollars to go to the schools. We're talking libraries. We're talking the state patrol. We're talking the prison systems, the colleges. I mean, all this stuff has to be done.
Yeah, I just let you know that my listeners know that I'm sitting in his office, and the last time I walked past his office, all horizontal spaces, the desk, the chairs, the couch, the floor, several feet up the wall in some places of paper, and now you can sit pretty much any place you want.
Well, we have cleaned it up quite a bit. Actually, the last week or two, we've been going through a lot of those things, and the budget, we're already effective, not 3.5 months, and going forward, we got other issues. We're doing a better job of hiding the files right now, but it continues.
It continues on, so... how do you handle all the reading?
You read what you can. As you said, with the budget, it's 6,000 pages. We come from a lot of different places as members of the legislature. We have men, women, we have young, old, we have lawyers, we have accountants, we have farmers, we have all this. So we all have different areas of expertise. So what happens when you go through the budget, for example, we have 5 subcommittees, and they'll each pick pieces of it, and they'll get into depth on those issues, and then they come back and report to the rest of us. If there's areas, in my case, because I was a county auditor, it happens to be taxation. I delve into that a lot more. You'll get in a lot more of that. But some of the areas that are dealing with attorney law or whatever the other issues may be, other folks do, and we all come together then, because you can't get through all of it yourself. I mean, you just have to take the areas you're an expert and then deal with it, and then you come back, and then when we get all that information, then you start making these decisions.
So not only you have to trust the other people on your team.
Well, certainly.
One person can't know it all.
No, we've got a few folks that are they know most of it, but they can't know it all, and that's Chairman Amstutz is one. I mean, he's been doing this for about 31 years, and that experience is just unbelievably beneficial to us. Because the rest of us, I've been here 5. It used to be before term limits that you wouldn't be vice chair of finance until you'd been here 8, 10, 12 years. I was that in 3, and I'm not as good. I wasn't as good a vice chair in year 3 that I'm now. I mean, you learn, you get better. And it's
how do you get better? I mean, what's through
experience? You just learn. I mean, you pick up things. You understand the process more. You understand the impacts. If you do this, if you do A, B is going to happen, and you just become better at dealing with people. I'm much more effective with folks, talking to folks, understanding in a short time what the point is and where we need to go.
So you chair your own subcommittees?
I have at times. I was the chairman of the Medicaid, the Health and Human Services Medicaid subcommittee one time. Since I've been vice chair, I am not, because we're really managing the other subcommittee chairs and everybody else is what it amounts to.
And you were here during the turbulent Senate Bill 5?
Oh, yes.
Was you ever felt physically threatened?
Nah. We had the day we voted it out, there was a lot of yelling and people standing very close to you, walking out, and someone said, well, weren't you afraid? I said, listen, I played college basketball. I said, I've had people standing 2 feet from me yelling at me before. And you really didn't feel threatened or anything, but there were some folks that are upset. I still think that was something we need to deal with. The public unions have gotten too much power, and because of that, we've got some issues financially in the state, and we need to deal with that. But well,
if there's anything else that I have forgotten or have failed to ask you that you wanted to include in this interview?
No, just I think that the big thing is that as we all know, no matter where we go, people look at us, especially if you're vocal about your faith. They look at you to see if you're true or not, and they'll know. And that's why it's so important that you do live the life. And we're not perfect, we know that, but it's the effort. It's taking that step every day, making sure you're trying to do the right thing.
Thank you for your time today. This is Reverend Thomas Wise. The show is called Politically Wise. I've interviewed Jeff McClain in his office at the Ohio State House. Thank you.
The show is titled Politically Wise, and I am your host, Reverend Thomas Wise. Thank you for listening today. If you want to email me, you may do so at politically.wise@gmail.com. Please like us on our Facebook page, Politically Wise. Now, here's your blessing.
Blessings based on Psalms 8, verses 1 through 9. Blessed are you when you declare God as your Lord. Blessed are you when you see God in God's creation. Blessed are you when you realize that all creation is the work of God. Blessed are you when you declare how excellent is the name of the Lord.